We're Forestry Board, Monday, June 9th. Roll call
Chair Burke,
here.
Vice Chair Kohler, Board Member Tinsley,
Here.
Board Member Curtis, Board Member Phelps. Mr. Chair, we have quorum.
Just want we're quite gonna start to go through, and I know we have a lot of deal on that urban forestry development plan, but I wanted to try to make sure we stayed on task and on time, we can just clean out. So we can just try to stay on place. Jack will get help as well. So definitely want to take that day and move a little bit, but hopefully we can stay on task. Not get too worried. This communication, don't have anything on board business. Review report for declining progress fine when you're intercepting in the sky. Yes. Sad to see that one go. Kind of surprised this lasted this long, but everyone's going all right with it.
Sure, yeah, I took a look at it, it's declining pretty quickly, it probably was kind of considered dead maybe months ago. I think that it's probably beetle kill, when what happens is the beetles attack the tree, infested with the fungus, pretty potentially dead, but then when the heat hits, everything comes off. It doesn't have the ability to infection flow. But it's hard to say for sure because maybe it was so weak. There's not really any pitch flow or obvious streaming staff to indicate that there's beetles in there, but it kind of looks like that. So it's incorrect.
Like the block, it looks like it needs to be removed, for sure. Okay. All right, make a motion.
I move that the declining fires at the southeast corner of the Cascade and Locust be removed by the city. I second that motion.
All in favor? Opposed?
Mr. Chair, the motion passes.
Moving on to those already. We got our banks in this. We hope it's East Haven.
But that is a little more difficult. So what happened? It's some guesses, but I didn't really feel like it'd be that helpful to do. It's right on the property line. For us to come to it.
Do we know if it's property or city right away?
Right of way.
And so the only thought I had on that was that the property is not planning to be developed anytime soon. The property is going to have that snag there, and it's kind of pulling it up, not much around, but.
I page 23, so.
Sure, you could, yeah, pretty short like that, and really focus very little of thing around. You know, barring if somebody has some plans for that lot, that would make sense, but.
There. Like discussion on it.
Well, that tree, that's something I wish we did more often, especially if there's no hazard at all. Then we still just have to live stuff that we're going to live, but that's good. They're going to this as well, with a high cut, but. Yeah, this seems like a decent place to do it as opposed to. The streets are closer to the street here, the sidewalks are. Not in favor of having it. Side of the.
Any recommendation on how high to keep that?
It might be good to look, I think I wrote 15 to 20 feet, and I think that would probably be manageable. The person that actually does the work, if they were to do it, I think they could assess, you know, they could take a close look if there's anything around the area that might cause problems. But the reality is that the likelihood of a habitat is very low. The trees turn moving at 90 at that point, right with one.
Yeah, it's real straight.
Yeah, and it's got all, I mean, it's a declining dead tree, but it's still got that iron structure.
Yeah.
So I would think 15 or 20 feet, argue that, then maybe the person actually creating the snag would probably have to. Probably if they come shorter than that.
Arborist make that.
Sure.
Is this something the city's gonna do, or is the arborist gonna do?
The arborists. Yep. We don't own climbing spurs, nor do we want to.
Make a motion to cut the dead ponderosa pine at 156 East High Drive. But it would be a standing high cut. Approximately 15 to 20 feet at the judgment of the arborist. To leave a habitat snag with the net of the tree.
See?
Second.
All in favor?
Thank you.
Letters computer process and. First one. Thinking. Nomination.
Thanks, Chief. Can we just all sign the original text?
I have a clean copy ready to go after the meeting for you folks to sign.
I'm going to share that with you. I think here pretty soon, we're gonna have access to some pretty cool information. Fairly detailed assessment with the state. As partnered with my NGO to provide for all the municipalities in the line. So, if you're interested in that, or if you want to discuss it or learn more about it, feel free to reach out to me and I'd be glad to connect with that information. It's not officially released, it's available right now, but my NGO hasn't said distribute this yet. But it gives some pretty valuable detail down to the census block. You know, you're kind of looking block by block or back into how much community coverage is in each neighborhood. And, that kind of thing could be used to help with that, establish a camping goal for the city systems. Or just to have a better understanding, you don't have to have a camping goal. Well, and that's some of that, maybe just in the. I just wanted to give you all a heads up and go people that.
Is considered this.
Except that, yeah, here in town is all.
Right.
Yeah, in this case, it would actually show the canopy coverage versus the impervious surfaces and all.
Right, okay, yeah, we'll be careful with this, so.
Uh-huh.
Sure.
And
Sure, like the creek side here, I mean. This is where the creek goes right here, is that correct?
Yeah.
This is Indian Ford here, but there's, this, you would think this would all be kind of green along here. Cottonwoods and things, but. I just wondered, it's gonna be better than that probably.
Yeah, very different.
Okay.
Has there been any talk about doing a canopy break with X amount of miles outside of the city to prevent that ground fire from coming down?
What now?
Canopy break, that's certain amount of miles that are outside of town to stop the canopy fire. That
Was a big moat around town.
Yep.
Treeless.
It would involve the Forest Service. Yep.
There.
They still do that down in California.
There also, some communities around it,
In Southern Cal, I grew up in Southern California, and every spring, the bulldozers would come, the big D8s and everything, they would put these huge fire breaks around towns, communities, and where, especially where the Santa Ana winds would come down out of those canyons. They would put these big fire breaks, and but I think there's houses there. That's the problem. It just has grown, you know. When they put in an electric line, they clear that for the electric line, you know, the power generating lines. And I don't know if they act much as a fire break over the old Brooks Scanlon Road would be probably the closest thing to a fire break around us.
still not big enough.
Huh?
Still not big enough, where it's in it can't be.
You know,
We did a bad things.
widen that a little bit or something. Because I don't know if you can stop a fire like Paradise Fire, or the ones in Los Angeles, with the winds at, you know, 90 miles an hour. There's not much you can do about it. Is there?
Nah. As soon as they stop flying aircraft. you know, It's too windy. It's bad.
Our council's been focused on defensible space inside the city and came up with, I mean, very aggressive requirements for new construction. I mean, there's not gonna be many junipers left. Or spruces. Or firs. So basically everything within 30 feet of a structure is gone except for a ponderosa or whatever's on the approved tree list.
But that's just for new development.
And which has a definition to it as well. Yeah. Yep.
Reading through the plan, one of the things that I didn't see mentioned much was the junipers. Of reducing the number of junipers on people's property, or getting them to reduce the juniper trees on the property. I mean, people have trees, but those are just porches, you know, if something comes in, they will catch on fire, you know, before a pine tree will, a fir tree. And, you know, that might be somewhere, it talks about educating the community and getting people to take those kind of trees out and plant something else. You know, a deciduous tree that would lose its leaves in winter and get green in the summer.
Paul's mentioning there, defensible space code, so there's prohibited plant lists that also went with that, juniper.
Okay,
So it's being, they're being identified as
all right.
prohibited. But this is just our new development code right now. But hopefully that same plan list will carry over as we work into the municipality code, so existing homes. Which is gonna be a tougher ticket there to get that going, and that's gonna be primarily trying to incentivize property owners. Either through grant programs or anything that we can do, education and so forth. That's on the list. And then of course home burning. This wants to look at that. So this canopy map that we're looking at, Avery.
So am I reading this correctly, that the brown areas mean, it says -28%, yeah, it's reduced? 28% in 10 years,
Yeah, that's an interesting feature in that you can look at the change from 2012 to 2022, which is a little dated at this point, considering how fast it's growing. But yeah, you can use the tool to evaluate the percent change over that last 10 years. And that's what you're seeing there. So the ones that are green or have main green, which showing they've increased the canopy coverage in those blocks that are. And of course, you can look much closer. That's just a screenshot that I sent, but you can actually play with the tool here pretty soon to be able to really evaluate a lot closer. You can also use the tool to understand, the population in a certain area, as well as the demographics and all that, just needs to be able to evaluate and prioritize your efforts. So,
it looks like just that my eye is that we've lost more canopy gain in a 10-year period.
Lots used to be half an acre. Now they're 2,500 square feet.
Mhm.
And as soon as you put the 30-foot buffer around that, I would say the good thing is we didn't have a street tree program prior to 2006. So where you see the green shaded colors is a direct result of having a street tree program.
it might be a really nice tool because of the complication of finding the place where trees do belong, where trees should be, because of course they provide so many benefits to our community, but using tools like that of how needed and value the power you can get into those spots. And a lot of people I haven't honestly delved that much into the city sisters and information, and we're pretty soon available for all those things.
I wonder if, the shoot style, website, there are tons of layers on their planning, their interactive map. For properties across the county. I wonder if this is not something that they would include as part of the.
I think some of the same information can get overlaid, and if you look at different tools like the tree equity score, and put it out before, you can use that to evaluate different, kind of compare different aspects of it versus canopy coverage.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of communities find, the neighborhoods with lower income, more diverse populations have less access to trees. Very common. That may not be the case in sisters, but so you can look through and say, we have a lot of high unemployment in this block, but we also have no trees. So, or maybe all the people that have young kids aren't making tree requests. Things like that. So there's different data that you can gather. Now, how accurate all that data is, you really have to dive in there and say, is this really telling the story of what's going on, or is it disrepresenting? So there's a lot of information, but it can help you get started.
Yeah.
You can pinpoint problem.
Yeah, open the conversation. Cool. Thanks, David.
There's another photo. We'll move on to another portion of the plan, which is 2321. We'll start on page, paper image, and then it's. Let the people that bring up, hand it out. And
Yeah.
Amazing, and I wanted to review the people for that year. We have my owners, want to. Keep this image.
You should be okay as long as the phone's just not on the table.
Okay.
Yeah.
The action items that we are communicating. Recommended space for tree growth in relation to sidewalks and roads. The city tree nursery. Strategic planning for camp recovery while considering wildfire risks. And heritage tree documentation. Those are the 4 action items that we gathered from this document. So we can keep working through the add action items. And once we create that, we can then we take the opportunity to dive into it a little bit more. So we can work on getting through and hand out. That sounds like a good plan. So, part of bringing wildfire mitigation fuel treatment. We have anything to address. Page 20. Yeah. But, fire back. Yeah, the scary one is, especially when it comes out of the north. Right? Actually, left side where. Forward.
Grass.
Scrub and. One load. 10,000 air fuel or something good. The band players. Rush.
We kind of included like, if somebody burns. In like I would big burn files occasionally, you would call in and say, I'm gonna burn it. No, in case anyone called in, so reporting something like that would those be included as well? And that's like what.
I,
What's the circle?
from my brief. Understand that it's a bit not like. No.
Through kind of, you know, these are world where they're all about that.
Significant fires, so not in every like burn pile, I mean, it's probably is considered a significant burn fires, these are like being a significant size, which could be like a. Sure, but yeah, and I, you know. Working at a dispatch as public information officer, I can tell you that a lot of there's a lot that get called in for people running legally outside of. An approved time or not fully extinguishing it, stacked up.
Yeah.
So I can get a lot of those, so like to look at this and say like, oh, this is. campfire, will be recreational. I would not be accurate, like, I feel like people, they keep it starts with like campfires or riding chains, but there's certainly are. But I think a lot of things that happen are negligent debris burning. But that doesn't mean I lost decompress.
Right,
It's all dangerous.
One most recently used to fire them. Outside.
Yeah, it was, he was illegally burning his cheatgrass.
I just use trying to manage sheepgrass, you know, just can't.
You have a lightning strike when you're going. You can get a app that goes where all the lightning is when it starts coming. And I get a buzz or ding, and then phew, it's over here by Black Butte. Here it is here. It shows exactly where these lightning strikes are. You know, especially right around Broken Top, when it comes over that way. It'll show it in real time when those strikes come, when the lightning goes and where it's hitting exactly. So it's very informative.
Yeah.
General.
I can put this as like time that. I would often set something on here. And it's actually, this is very much a fire permit right now. For hometown neighbors and.
Yes.
I have a question about it. It's what role, even though this is in the Forestry community planning, this happens a couple times whenever you do this, that I evaluate like what role the forestry board plays in wildfire litigation, and at the same time, when you go into tree preservation standards, which we missed before, or maybe I didn't do that last week, but whether or not that's there before sure, that's the planning commission that establishes those tree preservation standards for development and things like that. And just something to think about. I'm not sure. We'll have to.
Maybe or something. To discern. Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities, and I think it's good to consider so that we're not antagonizing a whole hundreds of other groups, but yeah, but I don't know that it's like a don't touch it, it's everything something we contribute, yeah, but.
Well, I think you bring up a point, Taylor, which is there's several times I was reading this and thought, well, the city is really being very proactive on this issue. And other topics that we read in the past, or some of this about talking about community involvement relative specifically to trees has not been explored very much by the city. But I think it might be nice to have some kind of one pager that says these are some big tree topics, the sisters, and which entities are responsible for working on that. But
Clarity for the sake of focus too.
yeah,
Our best discussion into the robust where it needs to be. And then if it's not, if it's maybe something we're adjacent to, but are not explicitly responsible for, we can welcome to sort of entertain or
some conversation, but no, it's time to move on, so. I'm gonna keep that aside.
First, keep it, obviously, with the city.
Mhm.
And once we have the river, so those, there, that's. very bad.
Yeah.
So, very much gonna show, and right there. Show that it's city. There's no real information. This,
I think looking through the lens of the public trees to start with, which fall under your guidance. But to look at those with a new critical eye. How do we maintain a healthy forest? How do we create a defensible forest? How do we deal with drought? How do we deal with pests? Because I think there is a motivation right now, like there is after every fire season or windstorm, to create a buffer all the way around the city, and I think an objective for this group to think about is how do we protect the citizens and maintain a healthy forest? We try to find that sweet spot.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's totally, thanks for that, like, refocusing there. I think that living in a fire dependent forest ecosystem, having a healthy forest, like, that is historic conditions inside to this area is going to be like, it is a defensible forest. More so than trying to create conditions of mixed types of species that we haven't historically had here, or, and getting rid of the juniper that's encroaching into our pine. Removing the excess fuel and doing the thermal pruning through prescribed fire. If we take those steps to do that forest restoration for forest health, then we are setting ourselves up for having a good line of defense. And that's what, I just was out with the fuels manager from the Forest Service a couple hours ago on a unit off of Forest Service Road 16. And that crescent shape that they've been working on around the city, they've completed, they put the final pieces in to create that first line of defense, and they started moving out to the next ring outside for community safety and forest health. And yeah, so I think, like, we can, as a city, can be good neighbors by managing our public trees so that we're creating, even larger boundary and barrier. But yeah, like, and if you have like a historic windstorm, our best defense is going to be removing ignition, things that can ignite next to your home. It's not going to be, a fuel break, I don't think.
The forces as a, moderate, low, has the fire danger signs about what the fire risk is when you're going out on Locust Third Road and, to devise something like that to talk about that the drought that's going on besides just the fire danger we're in. Drought this year was did you notice how big the pine cones are this year?
I didn't notice that, that's what.
Yeah, the pine cones in my house are bigger than they've ever been. And there are more little baby pine cones sprouting on the ground, around, everywhere in all the cracks. Sometimes you get a dozen or so. I probably have 200 or 300 little baby pine cones coming up this year because of weather conditions like that. It's a close, slowed down a little something. But something that could be reported every couple of weeks in the Nugget, or I don't know, another side that we're in a serious drought right now, or we're in we had a heavy winter with a lot of snow, and so there's gonna be a lot of grass growing. And just be cognizant of that, those kind of things. I don't know, maybe some kind of, like the Forestry, some kind of chart that shows, besides just the fire danger, what else is out there. To make people aware of what's going on. And it's, I read the things online and in the paper about all these people camping in the woods around systems. And that is a problem that people are worried about. And fires from those places. And, you know, I don't know, but nobody seems to know how to solve that right now. Redmond have a terrible time with it. Redmond has moved them out of town a ways, you know, their camp. And again, Redmond's closed down. In Cheltenham, it's closing down the one on the between towards Redmond, and because of fires that started there. And you know, that's something that we probably should look at, and the city council could look at. I don't know what council has been discussing on this matter.
Well, it's a little off topic, but it's definitely being discussed, last force plan.
Right.
So it's a coordination between the ranger station and the fire district and the city to really have these conversations. And who enforces what. Obviously, there's laws that the sheriff's deputy can go in there and write citations for if laws are being broken. But it's a problem around that is the sisters itself. We received reports back from sheriff's department that they are not seeing an increase outside of the normal increase that we have at this time of year, which is summertime. Yeah, so they are not seeing an impact as a result of other areas that have closed down.
I would be careful.
And just say what they would put it was, yeah.
I would be very curious to see that report. There's that's not what's reading, that's not what's reading about.
Where does it come from?
Their department,
From the sheriff's department.
boots on the ground. Currently. So I'll be really curious to see where that very valuable information.
Yeah.
Because our local deputies have seen a significant increase lately.
Okay, that's interesting.
So.
It contradicts
I'm
even
kinda like,
the nugget and reports in the nugget too.
so.
Okay.
Why I'd be a little curious on that, but not really. For that. Just getting the guys making the decision with the information we get it with, and rightfully so. So. Hopefully. And they get that, I think.
I just want to mention to people that on June 24th, which is Tuesday at 5 o'clock, the City of Sisters is offering a community forum about homelessness. And I'm sure that this topic of who's living in the forest, what's going on, will be addressed, and probably representatives of the sheriff's department, forest service, all these agencies. So mark that on your calendar, and
24th
of June at the Sisters Elementary, SPRP, the old elementary school.
Thanks, Tree.
Any event, it is a fire hazard that there are people, whether they're recreational campers or long-term forest dwellers, it is definitely fire hazard. People are out there, even if there are rules that there are no campfires allowed, that doesn't stop people from doing it anyway, and we have this other kind of. And I know the city is working really hard to, address this on many fronts, and I just really appreciate it. And see it like from a whole different angle being on the inside.
Yeah, I mean, just. I don't know about it, but how we gather that data to give you a statistical answer based off the top 10 prior years to this year. Where we had no coding that gives that's funds for a recreation site to be able to guide it, right? So very, very challenging.
I'm not getting my reservation.
You're not getting, not getting the right numbers, but unless I'm not clearly gonna sound more on the cop side, but specifically put in recreation points or campsite or.
Yeah.
So,
So Raider Station, they have a force officer, Jeremy, that goes out and literally tags GPS coordinates of all the camps out there. And makes notes on that kind of information to try to track that and stay aware of any growth or not.
Yeah, he works closely with local nonprofits, sisters, community leadership. Yeah, and they not only are service providers out there, but they're also engaged with Jeremy and up there.
No, I think so. I think they are able to separate it a bit, Patrick. But we did get our point in time count in January. Which last year was about 65 forest dwellers living out there. This year, this January, they said 100, about 120, so it doubled. But they also admitted that they have better counting now. So before it was could have been skewed by a process, and they're trying to constantly improve on the process. So the number's a little difficult to say, definitively that we've doubled out there, but the feedback we're getting, like I said, from the sheriff's department is not seeing growth as a result of the closure of those other places, and whether that's true or not, I'm not out there, so I can't say to that. I'm wondering if this group would want to see the prohibited plant list that the city council approved. Yeah, maybe in our next meeting. I need to get that to you, Jackson, or I don't know if you know where it is. I can find it for you probably sooner. Or we'll just kind of go through that and see what the Jennifer's been prohibited. But I'm noticing in this plan at the bottom of page 27 that it says to come up with an acceptable tree list. Yeah.
Right.
We didn't prohibit it.
Right. What do we plant instead?
Yeah.
What do we recommend? You go into Bend and you can see all the different trees along the city streets, maples, oaks,
Yeah.
What are recommended? It says use up at the top there, the third dot, it says use forest stocking inventories. So that was that the US Forest Service or state land?
I think for urban forestry, you can select from a lot more broad ballot.
Okay.
The Forest Service.
Right, and what they would
Yeah.
restock would be product.
It's definitely worth it. I think I mentioned that maybe last week, reevaluating the tree list as a part of this.
Yeah,
That's
that would be, I think that would be so helpful for
Yeah.
people in the community to have something to hand out and say. And to developers, I don't know if who they use or what they use. When when we were working with Hilly Road, that first development that went out there. Our kids came and they helped survey and take tree surveys of all the trees. And the developer said, oh, we can't push any dirt around a pine tree because of the. That was it. We have to take them out. We have to cut them down. We can't pile up any dirt on there I said, 6 inches, 12 inches, no, 80 kill it, And that's what we were told by who runs the big the West Lawn place now. Yeah, Hayden Homes, that's who it was, the Hayden Homes people, they give up. And we worked with them and they said, we've got to take all these trees out because I said, why don't you put a berm around them, and then do some landscape, oh, they'll all die. That was the word the kids caught. And we were kind of disappointed with that. And so, I don't know if it's true or not. I'm not an arborist and I know I see places where they pile rocks all around the pine trees and dirt and everything else to make a burn and plant more stuff on top of it. Those trees still live, so. Just, what can we recommend or should we recommend? Are there plans in the future for adding trees along the walkways and curbs here in the city? Assistance.
I think it's an opportunity, as it's mentioned a lot in the plan as well, for planting and education events for private property owners, for new development right away. So I have like a draft of, it's not huge because that's not where we live of those species, but you give that extension information and then just observations around those that share site. Yeah.
When we added on to the elementary school, the 4 new classrooms on this end, way back when, they sold bricks.
Yes.
Buy a brick.
Yeah.
Buy a brick and help build the classroom. And then the contractors and volunteers came and built the thing, put it together. People bought 100 bricks, 50 bricks at $50 a piece. And maybe we can do trees like that, something like that as a way to get people to help forest the city sisters, and add to the beauty of the.
There's a decent point in there. I think the city of Boise is doing now. They're trying to kind of do a per capita tree planting. Sometimes it's a big goal for city sisters. It wouldn't be as huge of a goal. But you evaluate what you want to accomplish. Sometimes that's a reasonable way of establishing the goal. One person to plant a tree, the appropriate species in the appropriate spot around town.
Or like park benches, people put names on benches and just, donate a tree.
So we're kind of here trying to get through this in the next 10 minutes or so. On page 27 here, a tree selection, definitely. Get a food tree list, which has some good ideas on.
And I think we can also see about adding in recommendations for how to plant. Distance to make sure you have around the tree site. Watering. Mound or no mound.
Yeah.
I live near Clear Pine and you're right. I mean, there's trees in these mounds and some of them are dying. And there's also a couple of big those behind. Forest Edge Road. They just have a huge amount of dirt at the base of those trees. But those are living. I don't know what the difference is. But we could talk about that. I know our landscaper, when they helped us, they said that, people like to put a tree on top of the mountain, because that's really fun to irrigate, especially like you said earlier. Why are there all these mounds around new development?
They want to make a sense of a space there.
You get more privacy in the property.
Right. Keeps the sound out and
Yeah.
provides a screen around your residence. But you need to put a dish in there.
Anyway,
Yeah, maybe that could be a subcategory of the tree selection is proper planting and spacing. And your recommendations for that.
I think trees need to utilize their forestry management plan as a community tree guide and so people can work through it. City of Grand did that, was really cool with it, looking at different forestry, and they find and also put all these recommendations for what you can do in your yard, and you have the tree list included in there, all the information is available.
I really like that idea, but
I can share that with y'all, you know, I maybe Jackson, if you want to review their plan, I think it's really cool.
that might be a good way to bridge some of the stuff that we have for the document already there to help with. The solid document to come up with literacy sisters that we've got to get some educational stuff in.
It's tree city, would say, have information on that, you know.
Sure, yeah, I have all kinds of.
I'm just gonna go to.
Does anybody have anything on 27?
I mind what the property is. The city owns, and I remember when I first, when I first was out hiking on Brook Scanlon at my, footbridge, all of a sudden there were a lot of big trees, big pine trees that had been taken down. And I thought, that was city property, is that, whose property was that?
No idea. Could have been Forest Service.
Oh,
So our
Right
property,
here,
if you were to
right.
go across the footbridge heading west, we would follow the power lines until they turned north. You hit an intersection of a road, that's Edgerton Road.
well,
Our property is right to the right of that intersection.
Is that for a well site? There's not a creek there, is there?
There's an irrigation ditch.
There's
Yeah.
irrigating.
And we've gone in and done,
No creek or,
no, just coming off Pole Creek.
oh, creek. Okay.
But we've gone in and done 2 different rounds of thinning, we've mowed. Did ladder fuel treatments. And the next treatment will be prescribed burn. So done quite a bit of work out there.
So that, it says. Future drinking water well, so you drill there by the,
Well 5 will go there whenever we need it.
when you need it, so go into the aquifer and. And if you turn at the end of the old elk farm, right? Isn't that Edgerton right there?
That's right where our property is.
Yeah, when you turn off of. It goes over the pass. Yeah, 240. Yeah, you turn left there and go up along the edge of the elk. And that's where it is, kind of at the end of that, you know. Yeah.
Where Edgington meets the Brooks Scanlon Road.
Okay, Brooks County.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just thought it was an interesting, note with the top. Second, I don't know, you don't know, I was there, I'm not sure that was.
Derek, yeah, correct.
It is called, the diameter they say is limited and also where the high school seat.
was very less than ideal conditions. For diversifying.
And as it gets drier and drier.
It gets dry, it goes east. And with the rain, you know, I live in Water Creek, whatever it was, we're right at that zone where you go across the canyon, there's a population, but around us, there's a lot of population, that's an area that was going to rainfall, maybe because of Eagle Butte. But, and then down the canyon, it'll get more, rainfall there, but it gets drier, and then as you go towards Redmond, there are fewer and fewer pine trees.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's just the natural occurrence of distribution of pines, rye pine and good pine.
Well, it's probably more dependent on, is it second growth or is it old growth?
Hmm.
So everything south of town has been logged. Like the trees out on the Edgerton site, we're lucky if we have a 20-inch tree out there. But all the big 30-inch trees, they're gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they went to the old mill many years ago.
Very read about that. There's a tree inventory of the city of Sisters. It's a tree. Where do we access that?
That kind of brings me to a question I have. Think there's opportunity to take our inventory, which I believe maybe Dan was working on. And getting it migrated to the tree plotter software that the state's providing. That way the public can access it and we can do evaluation of the stage and size of diversity. They don't do it all.
Because we're talking about Tim Cruise here on that part.
Yes. The tree inventory that Dan performed is on Tree Plotter and is publicly accessible.
Oh.
Or should be.
And it includes about 2,700 trees, all of which are either in the right of way or in city parks.
Does
Does-
it identify the type of trees they are?
It
The
does.
height, the
Okay.
size, the health.
Okay. And when was this completed?
Years ago.
Years.
Probably, yeah, I mean, 8 to 10 years ago.
2005.
It's later than that. Yeah,
20 teens.
we didn't have an urban forestry board till like 2015.
Have there been an embrayer timber trees ability easy?
On the 400 acres outside of the city, we haven't done a formal cruise, but we've had our wildfire consultant and city forester help us manage those stands for probably the last 10 years. So we've done several thinning treatments, constant dead tree removals, and then we'll have prescribed burns is the next thing that happens on this property.
Should we maybe sell this and take it up next time? Or
We did a pretty good job. Good shine.
Yes, we will resume. Page 30. Yeah, we're doing on page 30.
For next time,
That's very exciting. And then that action item was put on master list was yeah, looking true, right? After the group of sugars. I like the information of the critical high and also. drought, patch wildfire. Safety things for the, guidance for us as a board to make decisions and. I want. Being on the green tree list. The recommended tree list, so. That might be the tree report,
Sorry, what was that last one?
the city tree report, if they did with the count, kind of have that as a. Incorporate that information into community tree now. The potential, might not look, but it is. There. Anybody that had any lost to that. That also would be good.
Have a letter to sign.
Yeah, where it is.
Staff updates.
Dead tree on the creek.
Yes, we have a tree that's declining on White's Creek. Just west of the South Locust Bridge. That is outside of private property. It's got a dead top. We are looking into getting Avery out there and taking a look at it, giving us a recommendation. We're also coordinating, or will be coordinating with the arborist to strategize on how to get in there for either top removal or tree removal, because it is a difficult location at the
Did you
moment.
say it fell across the?
No,
Is it by the new craftsman home or is it?
it's right in our front yard.
Right in front yard.
Would have been great to see this before the foundation went in.
Or.
Right across, what's the name of the park there?
Creekside Park.
The little park, the Creekside.
Oh,
Buck Run Park, it's across the creek from that.
Yeah.
yeah, it's on the north side of the creek. It's got a southwardly property owner brought it to our attention, so we're taking a look at it.
The neighbor across the creek's pretty concerned about it. It's too bad. Huge tree.
Anybody else have any comment?
I just had one quick, just want to plant this in the board's mind to look at the East Portal, or what is now Sisters Gateway Transit Hub, Park and Transit Hub, whatever it ends up being. We've gone in, we've done our phase 1 improvements. We are doing a little bit of cleanup to the existing stand in there. We do not have any plans to do anything to that site. But if you guys can take a look at it, and we haven't even contemplated really, do we need to mow it? Are we worried about fire danger in there? It's very natural as it is. And I think the deer love it. I also think we've just through the construction, we've opened it up enough for site security.
Yeah.
For DCSO to be able to manage. But that's another probably 250 trees in there that we now own and need to maintain. It'd just be good to get your guys' feedback on, do you like the way it looks, or would you like it to look cleaner, more manicured with less bitter brush? And like I said, we're going to play apolitical here, so we just want to get some feedback from you guys.
Thanks for that request.
You bet.
Sorry, just real quick, do you know, the parks? When I was on the park board last year, there was a discussion about maybe doing a dog park on maybe 3 acres.
It's about a third of an acre.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
of
that makes
what we have room for, and we wouldn't propose any removals.
Yeah.
At all. Yep. We got a bid for the fence. We took that to city council and they did fund that for next year. Yep. Trying to figure out how to keep a natural dog park functional but natural. Yeah. Not sure if that's possible. Yep.
the state, urban forestry, conference, this last month. And I don't know if any of you all have interest, but there were people who had, asked me, hey, do you think we can hold the state conference in Bend or in Central Oregon in the future? And I was like, well, that's a lot to do. But if there are other people that are interested in that kind of thing, bringing that kind of a conference here, it could help us to have conversations like we're having about fire danger and university and all that stuff. Here in Central Oregon, typically it's down in the valley because that's where most people are, but probably not this next year, but the following year. There was a lot of conversation about bringing that to Central Oregon, so if other people have interest, right now, might go. Well, bring that kind of energy to some of our programs.
To knock out some of our to-do
Our
list.
list, yeah.
What do you think of this approved tree list? Anything we're missing? Help, yeah.
I think there was 170 people across the state.
Wow.
Thank you for you guys' hard work on Arbor Day. I
Yeah.
think the trees look great. Yeah, if you have any concerns, let us know.
Thanks for, it was
They're
very
getting-
well organized.
Yeah, they're getting irrigated, I think every other day or every third day, and it seems we'll be watching carefully in the heat for sure.
Thank you.
But I think it looks great.
Me too.
That's smart.
Yeah, I think it was like 60 some folks were there that day.
Nice.
It was great and like good use of everyone, you know, from watering to digging, planting. Everyone seemed really hands-on. So
It was great to have the landscape.
they were terrific.
Yeah.
Quality control. Making sure the plants, the trees weren't too deep and.
They rooting them.
Yep, yeah, they were doing a great job on quality control.
That area needed that. It was very stark and bare and yeah, I think it looks better.
For now, the next one is, July 14th. And the-